Welcome to the One Person Business Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Carly Reese.
And I'm Joe Rando.
And we're so excited to have Tim Noetzel on the podcast today. He is a web developer, designer, and the founder of freelancegps.com, where he coaches how to start and grow successful freelance businesses. He has a very unique story, though. He is not just another freelance one-person business owner. He actually grew his solo consulting business from $0 in 2019, so about 4 years ago, to almost $500,000 a year now in 2023. Usually on the show, we're all about lifestyle, running a lifestyle business, like a business that suits your lifestyle, not necessarily like getting rich in an hour, but this is just such an intriguing story and we are so excited to hear about it. So Tim, welcome to the show.
Carly, Joe, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
We were telling you offline that this interview couldn't come at a better time because Joe just got back from Inbound, which is HubSpot's big annual marketing conference in Boston. And our takeaways after, we were talking about how we maybe want to move away from some of our traditional marketing efforts, not all of them, and really focus on those one-on-one relationships, the networking and all of that. And it's funny because you grew that 480,000 in 4 years, primarily from one-on-one conversations and referrals, I believe, which is crazy. Like, how did you do that? What did that look like? Tell us everything.
Yeah. So in 2019, I was working at a startup. I was leading product design, and the CEO had just decided to pivot the business in a direction I just really didn't agree with. So I found myself kind of back in the job market. And I really just wasn't finding anything I was excited about. And I was talking to my wife, who was actually my fiance at the time, and she said, you've done some freelancing on the side for a few years. Why not turn it into a full-time career? But I didn't have a ton saved at the time, but beyond what we were saving for a wedding and a house. And so I knew if I was going to make this work, I'd really have to figure out how to find high-paying clients quickly. And after a lot of trial and error, the approach that I kind of settled on as working best was actually just taking a methodical approach to building relationships through one-on-one conversations. I really just found that so many of the other channels that folks recommend, whether it's freelancing sites like Upwork or building a blog, are really just challenging to use to cut through the noise. Whereas building one-on-one relationships with folks through conversations really just comes naturally to people. Everybody is comfortable talking one-on-one, and it's not the kind of thing where you have to really do sort of the sales and marketing song and dance. So you get a chance to kind of cut through a lot of the noise. And when you kind of fast forward to today, I work with 8 retainer clients, as well as, a lot of clients that I kind of work with a little more sporadically. And my business has grown every year. I've really been lucky in that way. And so it's really just kind of convinced me that this is a fantastic way to grow your business.
Yeah. So what does that look like? Because also my mind is, I feel like people have the initial leads or whatever that they'd want to start reaching out to. But then after a while, that stream just kind of starts to get smaller and smaller. How did you keep that momentum going? How did you reach out to people? How did that work?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And I think a lot of the folks that I coach, either say, I only know a couple of people or I don't know anybody. And what I found is that typically that's not the case, right? Maybe you know a couple of people who could actually be clients, but you probably know many, many more who either know someone who could be a client or know somebody who works in the industry. And so really what you're trying to do is figure out where your ideal clients are hanging out, both online and in the real world, right? So meetups, industry groups, Slack groups, LinkedIn groups, that kind of thing. And also who already knows them, who could potentially introduce you. Oftentimes that takes the form of other freelancers, particularly those in kind of complementary industries, right? So I mainly focus on web development. So marketers tend to be some of my best friends, right? Successful freelance marketers or marketing agencies are already working with the types of clients that I want to work with, and they're not competitive with me. So oftentimes they'll be willing to introduce you. So those two kind of tactics, right? Figuring out who can introduce you and also just going into the places where your clients are hanging out, meetups, startup accelerators, all those kinds of places, and having conversations, providing value, asking for advice, are great ways to start, natural, authentic relationships with the types of people that you need to meet.
And let me clarify, you mean you have to get away from your computer screen and actually go see people face to face? Is that what I'm gathering here?
It's shocking that you say that. Yes and no, actually. I'd say that definitely works really well, particularly if you are, in a larger metro area where there's a lot of folks, who might be good clients. But I actually have had a lot of the people that I coach have success without actually getting out of the building. A lot of times there's online Slack groups, digital meetups. Those can work well as well. But if you have the opportunity, I definitely encourage you to get out of the building and away from your computer screen and actually go meet some people too. It's a lot of fun. And I say that as an introvert. I'm actually kind of surprised by how much I've enjoyed doing it. And it's super effective.
Very cool. Hey, I just want to point out, just to back you up, Yamini Rangan is the CEO of HubSpot. And she said in the keynote that they found that focus on customer connection yielded 5 times the growth. So 5x on growth if you focus on customer connection, which is kind of astounding. I almost feel like that must have been a typo, but you're kind of a testament to that.
Yeah, and I live in Boston, so I'm a big fan of the team at HubSpot. I know several of them. And to me, it doesn't come as a surprise at all, right? We buy from people we like, we buy from people we trust. And, we tend to keep buying from those who we have an ongoing relationship with. So the closer you can get to your clients, the closer you can stay to your clients, the better off you're going to be, the more you're going to sell, the easier your work with them is going to be. There's just really all kinds of upside benefits.
So I have a question. You avoided websites like Upwork, you avoided cold pitching and all that kind of stuff. At some point you have to take the conversation from conversational at a meetup to, by the way, if you want to have my services. How do you do that without coming off sales? Like, how do you keep the organic part of the conversation going throughout?
Absolutely. So I think there's kind of 2 things relevant to that question in terms of my approach, right? One of them is just having authentic conversations where you talk about yourself and you ask questions of the other person. And in terms of talking about yourself, it's all about just kind of saying what you do and what makes you different. And so the nice thing about that is you don't actually have to pitch folks. If they've got work for you, or know somebody who does, they'll volunteer it. They'll raise their hand and say, we're looking for somebody who does web development, but with a focus on conversion rate optimization. And so that is, the nice thing about this is you don't have to sell to someone who's not interested in buying. And so I really only kind of put my sales hat on once I found someone who's, who actually has a project they need help with, right? And so, in every conversation, either they raise their hand and they say that, or they raise their hand and they say, I know somebody who you should talk to. And if neither of those things happens, you simply ask them if there's anybody else that they could introduce you to who might be helpful or who you might be able to help. And so, if you're just starting out, I recommend having a lot of these conversations from the perspective of asking for advice, right? I'm just starting this business. If they are another freelancer, you can ask them, how they found their clients, who they know in the space, who would be good to talk to. If they are, somebody in industry who could theoretically be a potential client, right? Ask about their experience working with freelancers and consultants. What's gone well? What have they liked? What haven't they liked? What does an ideal partner look like? And in both cases, you're kind of set up in a way where you can ask for some introductions, but they're not introductions to make a pitch, right? They're introductions to have another conversation. And if somebody wants you to pitch to them, they'll bring it up. And you'd be surprised how often that happens. It feels like, it's really only every couple of conversations. It's not like you have to talk to 100 folks to get one lead, right? If you're talking to the right types of people, there's demand out there. People need help to grow their businesses. Everybody is working towards making their business more successful, or they wouldn't be doing it. And they're looking for folks like you.
Awesome. Awesome. So as of now, I'm kind of hearing like it seems like it's pretty streamlined, like go to an event, reach out online, whatever, make your introduction, get to know them, build that relationship, and then make $480,000 in a few years. I'm assuming it wasn't always that easy and it wasn't that smooth the whole time. Maybe it was, but what kind of obstacles and challenges did you face on this road that you created for yourself? I'm just curious because right now it just sounds so simple, but what has it always been?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're exactly right. Every overnight success story turns out that it takes, 5 or 10 years, right? And so I definitely have encountered my fair share of obstacles, maybe and then some. And I think, the three kind of categories that those fall into are, figuring out who your ideal clients are, figuring out how you meet them and close the sale, and then figuring out how you work with them on an ongoing basis in a way that sets you up for success, keeps them happy, and keeps business coming your way. And so, at the beginning, I think a lot of what I struggled with was, who should I work with? And, regardless of whether you're in marketing or design or engineering or any other field, right? You're gonna face that question when you're starting out, right? And it turns out all clients are not created equal, right? Some clients send lots of business your way. They're easy to work with. They're happy to pay premium rates because they want to pay for quality. They give good feedback. They ask smart questions. Other clients, not so much. And so if you've got a good relationship with good clients, it means your life is really easy. And if you've got clients who are doing things like constantly changing the scope, it makes things a lot harder. And your life really becomes a grind. And what I found was focusing in on really who those types of companies are made a huge difference, right? Some of my early clients were really a challenge. And that was partially because I didn't know any better and I wasn't kind of setting myself up for success. But in many ways, it was just because they weren't a great fit. And so, like if you're working with a mom and pop pizza shop as a web developer, you may find that you have to do tons and tons of handholding. Same thing with a Fortune 500 company, right? You might find that a lot of those folks aren't kind of tech first people. They don't really kind of speak your language. They don't know what a successful project looks like. And so you have to do lots and lots of work. Whereas if you're working with like an e-commerce company or a tech startup, for example, right, they live and breathe technology. They're kind of technology first companies, so they value what you do. That makes life easier. And so, finding clients who are the right size, finding clients who really value and prioritize what you do makes a huge difference. And finding clients who are able to ask smart questions and good feedback makes a huge difference. So that was kind of the first area that I struggled with. And then the question was, once I kind of figured out who those ideal clients were, how do you meet them? And before I kind of settled on this method of one-on-one conversations, I tried all sorts of things. I tried blogging and social media, and I found that, surprise, surprise, those things actually take a lot of work when you're doing them in a business context. I tried some of those freelancing sites and found that, everybody is allowed to join them. So that means everybody does. Really it ends up being kind of a race to the bottom. And then, of course, there was a whole host of things around, how do you close the sale? How do you set expectations with clients, manage clients, that kind of thing as well.
Hey, I'd like to just dig into something that you've implied a little bit, and I think it's important, especially for people starting out, and that's this concept of price, right? You kind of said there's these companies that are willing to pay for quality work, and then you said it's a race to the bottom on Fiverr and those kinds of sites in terms of, I'm assuming, race to the bottom on price. So how did you think about pricing? Were you flexible on your pricing at all to get the right deal, or was it this is the price and if you don't want to pay for quality, then I have to help somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say I was flexible to a degree. But only to a degree. Right. And I think what that means, right, is you have to understand, what the minimum price is that you're willing to take for a certain amount of work, in order for it to be worth it to you. And so, for some people that price is going to be lower or higher than others, but really there's really only three ways to kind of price things, right? There's, what's called cost plus, right? Where you take your cost, and if you're, Starbucks or McDonald's, right, the cost of a cup of coffee is the labor and, the ingredients and all of that kind of stuff. And then you add something on top of it, right? And that methodology works decently well, for physical goods, but isn't necessarily great for services, because the question is, well, how much more are you worth, right? You can also, do what's called value-based pricing, right? Where you look at the value you're going to deliver, and price based on that. Or you can do market pricing, which is really just like looking at the range of prices. Right. But, oftentimes people find with market pricing, that it's also pretty arbitrary, right? You can find people willing to work for $5 an hour on Fiverr. You can find, really big agencies charging $5,000 an hour, for ostensibly the same type of work. And obviously there's some kind of difference, but the question is what's fair. And what I really recommend is kind of using those three inputs to triangulate to your pricing, right? So your costs, the amount of money you absolutely have to earn in order to do things like pay your mortgage and, save for retirement and put food on the table, right? That should be your minimum, right? But then you can use the other two levers to inform what your prices should be. And, for me, that number has changed over time as well. Right. And so the other thing that you can do is trade up clients, as your business starts to grow. So, the numbers that you're willing to accept when you're first starting out, might be a lot closer to your costs plus a little bit. But as your business starts to grow, you can increase those prices, and be more choosy with the types of clients you want to work with.
Cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it's just such a tempting thing for new people to say, well, I'll be cheaper. But then when the mortgage doesn't get paid, it's not such a great strategy.
Yeah. And I think ironically, I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because I think ironically, the cheaper you go, the harder your life is, not the easier. It's funny, but the clients who are focused on, pinching pennies tend to be the ones who demand the most. Right. They tend to be the ones who, ask for the most changes, who, don't respect boundaries, who, change the scope last minute. Whereas the ones who can afford to pay more, and are willing to pay more tend to be the ones who are more professional, who are more used to the types of work that, you want to do. And so I'd really encourage you not to try to take the shortcut of being the cheapest. It really, ends up, biting you in the end, in all sorts of ways, not just, on the price itself.
So I have a question for you. We're kind of talking about some of the things that you think through in the beginning as you're growing your business, you're setting your price, all of that. And then in the beginning, your business can be all about growing your business. But once that's up and running, how do you balance running a business and like actually doing your consulting for your clients while also making sure you're still growing your business? So working on and working in your business.
Yeah. I think there's two major levers that I kind of think about there, right? One of them, is pretty obvious, and it's just making time to work on your business, not just in it. I think in particular, when you're new, I'd say at least 20% of your time needs to be kind of focused on that, because it's going to make a huge difference. But the other thing that I think is really important there is the selection of what type of marketing you're going to do, right? One of the reasons I settled on the kind of one-on-one conversation approach is because I find it was so much more cost efficient, right? You could spend like 5 hours a week and have 5 to 10 conversations, and you're probably going to get a new client out of that. And so, when you compare it to, something like Upwork, where the so-called advice, if you're actively looking for work, is to submit, 25 to 50 proposals a week. It's just highly, highly efficient. So I think that's the first point. And I think the second point is just setting yourself up for success by making sure that you're going to have ongoing work, right? And so, typically when I start with a new client, it's a one-off project, right? You've got to date before you can get married. But during that one-off project, one of the things you want to be doing is gathering as much information as possible about what the business's ongoing challenges are, and finding ways that you could help that business on an ongoing basis, so that you can sell them into a retainer project. So if you're working on the internet, oftentimes that's going to be in the form of getting metrics, right? Getting access to their analytics, getting access to information about the major levers of their business. And also just kind of having conversations with them about what's going well, what's not, and using the project as an opportunity to uncover additional challenges that you could potentially help with them with at a future date, right? And the nice thing about that is if you can turn a one-time client into a retainer client, you have a high degree of latitude to not market yourself in the future because you've got work coming in every month.
Recurring revenue, love it, right? It's the magic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and then actually so you're talking about marketing or not having to market yourself. So earlier we were talking about how you grew your business with one-on-one conversations and referrals. Were those just natural referrals from happy clients, or did you have an official referral marketing program?
Yeah, so I'd say, honestly, it was kind of somewhere in between the two. Right. It certainly wasn't a referral marketing program in the, B2B, like SaaS sense of the word, right? Where, you have a little pop-up that says, okay, we'll give you, $500 in cash or, 3 months of free service for referring somebody, right? But it wasn't like I just kind of did my best work and hoped for the best. Right. And so I think there's a couple of components there, right? One of them is understanding when to ask for referrals, and the other one is understanding how to ask for referrals, right? And so in terms of when, typically what I would do is try to identify like one of the early points where they would have received quite a bit of value, right? And so, if the first project was like a 1-month project, it might be at the end of that, right? If I was starting with a company with kind of an ongoing project, it might be after the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But identifying a spot where they will have been like, wow, Tim really did a good job. We're really starting to see the value from what he's doing, right? That's when you want to make the ask, right? And then the second question is what should you be asking for? And I think there's a couple of different things you can ask for, right? One of the really low level asks that you can make is just, hey, can you write a recommendation on LinkedIn? Or would you mind filling out this feedback form? I'd love to just hear how you're feeling about everything so far, right? And in that, you can ask if they'd be willing to let you use their feedback as a testimonial. Those are two like really low level asks. But you can also ask directly for referrals. Hey, do you know somebody who might benefit from this? You can take a look at your main point of contacts, LinkedIn connections, and ask for introductions to specific people. I've tried kind of all three of those methods, and they all work well to varying degrees. But that was kind of the approach that I took. Was just make sure that I was doing that for every single client, but it wasn't like the formalized kind of program that you might see for a SaaS company or an e-commerce company either.
I have a question on this, just going back in time a little bit. So when you first went on your own, had you built any kind of a network or a place when you launched into this that you had a pretty good network of people built out to launch into, or was it kind of starting pretty raw?
Yeah, so I had a little bit of a network from having worked at various startups in and around Boston, but it wasn't huge by any means. Honestly, I'm kind of a natural introvert, and so I was never one to like go to networking events, work the room, or any of that kind of stuff. But I knew a few people. But the thing that I found is even for those who kind of are brand new, you probably know a whole hell of a lot more people than you think, and even people who are substantially more relevant than you might think. I always use an example of somebody who's got a cousin who's a plumber, right? And if you're working in the tech space, right, you might tend to think that plumber is not all that relevant to you, right? They don't do website design or development or anything like that, right? But most plumbing businesses are small businesses. They typically have a logo. That logo is typically designed by a designer or at least somebody in art school, right? Those people know people in the design world who are going to know, developers and agencies and marketers and all sorts of people. So oftentimes, even if you don't know anyone who's directly relevant, you're only one or two hops from somebody who is. And so, I found that it's really just about thinking a little bit creatively about who could introduce you to whom. Doing that will set you up for success.
Yeah, that's really smart. So I have a quick question. So you have obviously scaled your business very well. Did you have any tools along the way that have helped you grow your business, whether it's with marketing or just managing your clients or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think there's two tools that I really recommend folks check out. One of them is called Harlow, and another one is called Harvest. Both of them are kind of tools designed for freelancers and agencies, and that help you do things like track time, bill clients, that kind of thing. And I think like once you're going, the lifeblood of your business is really tracking your time carefully, right? And less so for billable hours or anything like that. I don't work with clients hourly. I for the most part, rarely recommend that the folks that I coach work with their clients hourly. It's just, I don't think a good deal for anyone all around. But you want to know how you're spending your time, right? And you want to know at the end of the day, what is your effective hourly rate? Because, a lot of times you'll end up spending tons of time on email or on phone calls or those kinds of things. And if you don't know where your time is going, it becomes incredibly hard to grow your business. And so tools like that I found make a huge difference just in terms of your overall awareness of your key metrics. They also, make it substantially easier to manage your clients in terms of sending invoices, in terms of, getting statements of work signed, those kinds of things, which are also really important.
No, that's great. And one other question that I had, sorry, I feel like my brain is constantly just like, oh, and I wanted to ask him this, and then I wanted to ask him this. So I feel like one-on-one conversations and referrals, those are kind of consistent approaches that people can take for decades. It can be a good part of their plan, but trends are always changing. And whether it's with marketing or with AI or whatever, have you had to pivot or adapt since starting in 2019? Or do you think you'll have to and change different ways they've done it so far because business trends change so much?
Yeah, I think for the consulting side of my business, not really. And in my mind, that's because at the end of the day, right, people always want to do business with people. And, sure, there's, AI is, I think, a fantastic invention, and it can speed up dramatically a lot of the things that we have to do. But in many ways, the proliferation of AI has actually made my method more effective, I think, because the number of, cold emails and cold pitches that companies are getting has gone way, way up. And that means, the level of noise is just higher. And I think, Carly and Joe, I'm curious what you guys think about this, but in my experience, the noisier a channel gets, the harder it is to use. And the only way to kind of cut through that noise on that channel is with quality, right? And I think nothing is higher quality than kind of one-to-one, and something that's hyper personalized to the individual you're talking to. So in my experience, I haven't had to change things too much. I do think other industries are going to have to change things quite a bit. But oftentimes I think that might go, more in the direction of the personal rather than less.
I'm telling you, I just got an email today that was clearly AI generated from my LinkedIn profile. So somebody, I don't know whether it was automated or copy and paste, but sucked in my LinkedIn profile and generated this, looked good on paper, but didn't work one bit, email. And it's like, here we go. Here it comes, and it's just...
Were there a lot of emojis?
Not as many as you would have expected, but yeah, just kind of taking the facts, but not putting them in a form that anybody that actually read it as a human would have put it. So, but yeah, it's absolutely true. We're just going to get noisier and noisier, and the personal approach is what's working the best for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And Tim, I love hearing this success story of yours. I think so many people could aspire to do what you're doing. And I think this is going to serve as such motivation for those listeners that are in that boat. So I have a question for you. What is your favorite quote about success?
Yeah, I think my favorite quote comes from Winston Churchill. He said that success consists of going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. And I think for someone who, considers themselves an entrepreneur, who's worked, in and around startups pretty much his whole career, nothing could ring more true for me. I really believe in kind of the lean startup approach of building tests, measuring the results, and learning, and then kind of just continuing to do that over and over again. And so I really think it works. I think embracing failure and realizing that it's doesn't have to have the huge negative connotation that it often does, is really a mindset that every solopreneur, every entrepreneur can and should take. It just makes a world of difference in your business.
Love it. You should be a consultant.
You got to be ready for failure, because if you don't have failure, you're probably not doing anything, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Well, obviously I was kidding. You are a consultant, and I'm sure there will be people that are going to listen to this who want to hear more about you. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at freelancegps.com. I've got a free course there on how to start and grow your freelance business. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. But yeah, I am around and available and excited to help, any of your listeners.
I know. What do you even call tweets? X's? I don't even know what the actual...
Yeah.
I think they just call them tweets still.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Tweetses. Well, Tim, this has been such a wonderful episode. Very inspiring. I know that I'm motivated from it, and we just can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thank you, Tim.
Likewise. Thank you both.
Yeah, and listeners, we hope you enjoyed this as well. We look forward to seeing you next week for our next episode of the One Person Business Podcast. See you next time.
Bye-bye.